this session. Basically, if you see that India is supposed to achieve all United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and if I talk about the particular Sustainable Development Goal number 8, so it talks about promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth and decent work for all. But we also know that how things have changed over the last 2.5 years. I don't want to repeat on that part. But we all know, acknowledge and accepted the fact that our work pattern, workplace, the way we work, everything has changed. Moreover, there is a technological change happening across the globe from an Industry 4.0 perspective and other perspective, which kind of guiding us towards more of a digital economic culture. Now, I'll give you some data points being a consultant, so I need to give you some data points. So normally KPMG does a CEO outlook survey where we talk about around 1,500 close to chief executives across 11 economic regions across the globe. Now, when we did this survey this year, around 75% of the business leaders taking part in this, they have said that they have started accelerating their digitizations of operations. So if you see in the last 5 years or 10 years, it was a slow process, but maybe it has picked up much pace in the last 2 to 3 years. They also said that talent risk is a big concern for them. Possibly that was not the main agenda point for them, but going forward, they have ranked it is among the one of the top 10 concerns for them. And 62% CEO said that skill shortages is actually preventing them to keeping up pace with the technological changes they are facing. Now, significantly, what we have observed in this survey also, that 35% employees across the organization, including government, private sector, actually need to be reskilled and upskilled in order to kind of maintain the momentum. And 54% companies have started making their large investment in terms of the learning and development facilities. So one of the other changes that is happening, and companies and organizations are kind of welcoming that step, that now talent is available from anywhere. It's not necessary that you need to be constrained from a geographical location perspective. You can actually avail the facility of an expert or a worker, depending on, of course, the line of industry or line of operation we are talking about. And in a way, gig economy and at the same time availability of people is easy. But on the similar side, the flip side of the coin is people have much more options for them. So how do you skill and upskill people, keep them motivated, keep them incentivized, and as well as retain them? Now, one of the last things is that most of the countries, leaving apart few advanced countries, probably our learning and training ecosystem are not geared up to face the challenge. They are of course catching up, but still there is a lot work need to be done in terms of making it more streamlined and making people happy, keep them incentivized, and keep them interested in what they are doing. So this is the kind of background, and you see why this session is extremely important and relevant from that perspective, more from an upskilling and reskilling perspective. So if I can start with you. So given the overall situation that is happening, how do you see in this digital world, how do you develop the next generation of leaders in a more remote economy or remote world?
Hello, am I audible? Okay, so I think this is an interesting part of the puzzle, because at the end of the day, any organization is as good or bad as its leader. Everything has to come and start from the top. When we do talk about the skill gap or the skill problem, so as to say, first I think we need to look at what is the barrier, or what are the barriers which a leader would face so as to address this gap. I think the when, what and how is something which all leaders kind of struggle with when it comes to the skill problem. So what do we need to do to address the skill gap is the question, a pertinent question which every CEO, CXO would want to understand, that what are the skills of the future and what do I need to do to be able to attract the kind of talent which is going to be needed for me to have a sustainable organization in the future. So the what of the question. How will I be doing it? Do I have a model, a business model to, rethink and reskill my entire working population, my entire organization? So a business model to sell as to what am I going to do that, and who is going to do it. So it's obviously the HR fraternity that they look at, and is the HR infrastructure geared up to change? If I do propose a digital strategy, is the HR infrastructure geared to do that? So I think these are the three broad questions which every CEO, CXO is grappling with. That what do I need to do? How do I do it? And is my HR fraternity geared up to do it? That was the background, the context, the barrier part to it. Now, what kind of leaders we need to be able to do it? I think very interestingly, I would say we need a master chef, so as to say. As a master chef looks at putting, a plethora of ingredients to dish out something very interesting. Similarly, we need leaders today who are able to put in ingredients of both technology as well as humanity, and then look at churning out an organization which kind of, caters to the next gen of work and workers. I would say, 2 to 3 skills which are very, very important for leaders of the future to manage a workforce of the future. Technical intelligence or technology intelligence. You need to be technology teenagers. It's a term I read somewhere and I kind of caught on. Technology teenagers. Like teenagers grasp onto technology. They aren't averse to anything that's new. How do you look at becoming a technology teenager and having that technical intelligence to not think of any change or technology as a burden, but have the active agility to be able to embrace that technology and then look at seeping it seamlessly in your organization. I think the second skill which leaders need to possess is cultural intelligence. We very rightly heard Debabrata talking about there are no barriers of language, borders. There is too much diversity in workforce, not only in workforce but also in customers. We are servicing not only our our organization, our people, but also our customers don't have borders today. So how do we develop, or leaders develop, that cultural sensitivity to be able to cater to this wide segment of both customers as well as the workers? I'll give you a very uncanny example. There was a colleague who came to me with a very specific problem last year during Diwali, asking, do you have a policy on Diwali gifting? I said, in India it's a practice. Diwali is our biggest festival. We don't have policies. Do anybody of you have policies on Diwali gifting, what you need to give to your employees? I even went to Mercer asking for them. Do you have a policy? I said, where is this question coming from? And I was surprisingly told, oh, my China counterpart who has to approve my budget is asking me. So this is, cultural sensitivity. Very, very uncanny example, but just to kind of make you relate to it. So cultural sensitivity is extremely important. And the last, but probably the most important, is the human angle, the emotional intelligence. We may say that, by 2030, maybe 800 million jobs are going to be replaced by robots, etc. But what you can't take away is the human touch which a leader needs. The sympathy, the empathy, the ability to relate to your people, the ability to have that face-to-face conversation and encourage, motivate, and make them work towards the organizational, or give them the organizational perspective. A robot cannot do that. So I think these are some of the skills.
Thanks, Aarti. I think you have kind of pinpointed it more from a technology intelligence, cultural things, and the human angle part of it. And possibly you also captured that the agility and the adaptability part of it is kind of ingrained in the 3 themes that you have mentioned. Thank you very much. I'll move to Ankita now. So, Ankita, we are seeing that the need for this continuous learning program for our employees is day-to-day increasing. And more organizations are kind of investing it in order to reskill. So what do you think would be the optimum models or kind of methodology for this kind of ensuring that this continuous learning and development happens? I'm sure you have a policy, but I'm talking more from a larger perspective that how the guiding principles around this should happen.
Thank you so much for the question. I think when we talk about learning and development, or when we talk about upskilling or reskilling our employees, the fundamentals have not changed. Earlier also we used to focus on the requirements of our organization or the projects, and that would never change. That's the base. Now the difference that we see, I think it has shifted more towards people. Instead of purely focusing on where we want to see our organization maybe after 6 months or 2 years in terms of skill capability, we also want to know where each individual wants to see himself or herself, because that's critical. The way earlier we used to invest, probably by the end of the year, a company would reach a level which was targeted, but most of the organizations would fail to retain people who were not preferring that particular path. So one major change, I would say, it has become more people-centric. Now when we identify, so we say engage, identify, and involve. So when you identify, instead of just looking at the market space where we want to invest, we also do an internal survey, and I think most of the organizations are doing. Earlier, training need analysis, which is a key part of appraisal process, I don't think anybody went beyond initializing or implementing it, to a 60 or 70% either. Everybody collected that data and it was left to a project manager or the reporting manager saying that you have to decide what would be good for the employee, and that kicked in more of attrition, because who will go back to the same sheet throughout the year once it is submitted to HR? I don't think I have seen my self-appraisal sheet after that day one when I filled it and submitted it with my reporting manager. But a lot has changed thanks to technology, where we, take those key pointers, we tag it to those individuals, and that's how we define their learning curve. So the story is long, and I think most of the organizations are doing it. But one thing which has to be highlighted, and probably which has to be followed for ages now, that it has to be people-centric, and more than that, it has to be individual-centric, because the need is more unique than generic. Thank you.
Thanks, Ankita. I think it's very interesting that how you are making it more customizable, and which will also provide some kind of incentive to the employees also, that okay, there is a customized plan for my career progression as well as keeping me relevant from the current requirement perspective. I think that's a very fair thing. I'll come to Daniel now. So Daniel, lot of things have changed over the last 2.5 years. So how do you think that this remote working impacting our available talent pool, and what are the opportunities? Let's say, for example, how are we rethinking our value propositions, sourcing the right candidate, attracting new target groups? So I know many policies have changed across organizations considering this remote working thing. What is your overall thought on this part?
I think so. Culturally, in the past 2.5 years, people have got attached more to their families. It's the positive way and the negative way. It's also a constructive way also. But I think so that the hiring techniques have changed. When, like, if we have to say it, like, we have also made our leaders think more HR. I think so that was easier was because there is only a limited space HR could step into a remote working. Basically because the team contribution or the team conversations are now pertinently between the 4 or 5 people that are there, and there is this whole thing that the room is actually missing out, and we are actually sitting in 5 different environments and trying to get one objective, the organizational objective or the team objective. But what actually got married along with it, or what actually got encapsulated together with it, is the fact that people were balancing their homes along with work. So what had happened is that today when we're trying to get them out of their remote spacing, even my managers are talking the lines that we prefer this, but they are the ones who build the culture, or they are the ones who build the organizational objectives. So what we have done as a journey, as me being an HR, or with my leads, was basically developing a culture that was more family oriented sort of a conversation. It was much more easy to get into that, was also because we come from a comms background, so the tendency of over communicating this sort of language was much more there. When we attracted talent, I think so, we understood that, I think so specifically the three generations started standing out. The one generation that was wanting to be loyal to an organization, to an information revolution that is basically more of our generation, my generation if I had to put, and then the one that is quality generation. The quality generation is that you cannot say that the job is going to get you these stuff, because they are already achieved a lot of things in their perspective, or they're running on an insta sort of recall value. So for us it was very important, like how can you make your objectives or your hiring techniques that has more recall value, or trying to be more competitive around it. But I think so the fact that people are being in an Indian setup, I think so it helped us to be more closer to the family oriented values, that actually helped us to navigate the recruitment process. So if you said that we actually asked a person not to dress up, we basically said them to be in your normal attire, that's basically in your morning clothes, or if you're attending the interview in the afternoon clothes. Evening, yeah, basically, like we had Friday interviews called the pajama interviews. So that was just breaking the ice, but I think so that actually attracted a lot of quality hiring process that we did, and I think so it was just to break the ice, try to attract the talent, gimmicks of marketing comms sort of a thing. But I think so when we actually moved into the workspace, we still wanted them to go back to their homes and still work from home. So I think so culturally, I think so we changed the leadership approach around it to sustain that sort of environment. And this is going to change. In 6 months down the line, that definitely is going to change. But I think so our leaders have become more HR, I feel. That's an approach that I felt majorly changed a lot of environments. I could see a lot of leaders talking more passionately. You could see a lot more LinkedIn posts coming from leaders than the HR folks. That actually changed the culturally, that people wanted to be more accessible, also wanted to sound more accessible. And I think so that's where we are relating it to all the three generations. So I think so that's a technique of attracting talent and keeping the working of remote spacing still alive. It's still active, while some of the big tech firms have actually asked people to come back to offices on a regular basis. But I think so in that whole process, all of this is also reskilling our leadership. We try to understand, we try to make that chapter in the leadership first to basically translate to the larger segment. So that's it.
Thanks, Danny. I think what I can pick up from the conversation is that you are particularly focused on two aspects. One, how do you enhance the onboarding experience or even the interview experience part of it, and once they join, how you give them a feel of more family-oriented culture rather than strictly corporate culture. And I understand what you said. Showing some kind of result, but it's still evolving in nature, I think. Thank you. I'll come back to you, Aarti. So this industry 4.0, robotics, mechatronics, AI, so we are hearing this since last 3 years. I will give you an example. So as an organization, we also do a lot of skill gap studies, training need assessment, both for government and private. But when we speak to HR leaders like you or even the other HR officials, is it really possible to predict, given the technological change happening, what is the exact requirement 5 years down the line, or it's better to plan on a year-on-year basis and see the changes and then adapt? I know it's a difficult thing, but what is your thoughts on that? Because I face this problem having interaction with HR officials. Because I'm not blaming them, it's not easy possible. That's why we have also said our clients that we should minimize it maximum up to 2 years and we should revisit the plan. Because that's the kind of thing happening.
Okay, interesting question and quite a big one. Actually, it is the biggest piece of the puzzle. If you solve it, you mostly, crack the code, so as to say. To understand, the context better, let's talk about what do we mean by industry, 4.0 first. So we know that we've all had phases of industrial revolutions, over the decades in our journey of the revolution as such. So the first industrial revolution was when, we had the steam engine, the steam and the water power coming into existence, and the products that got developed on account of that. The second was on account of electricity getting discovered, and the automation or the products that got developed around that. The third is, I think, what we all have seen when IT and automation I'm not too old though, so I'm sure you all also have seen cordless phones, but we don't have them any longer. We've got smartphones in our lifetime. We didn't have them when we were kids, right? So that's IT, the kind of laptops and the gadgets that we are using. Some of them are already obsolete, some of them are now, new versions of that is coming on. So that's the IT automation phase, which we are experiencing right now. Next is Industry 4.0, which is AI, cloud computing, IoT, which is Internet of Things, or Industry and Internet of Things. I mean, these are terms we are hearing continually. We are experiencing also at some level. Like Internet of Things is basically what? Smart devices. We know about Alexa. We know about driverless cars. We know about newer apps which are making life easier. So these are coming. We're talking chat boxes. We are talking about AI in a lot of industries. I think services, banking, insurance. These are segments which have already adopted those technologies. But what percentage overall as an industry? Maybe I would say under, I don't have any statistics, my own assessment, maybe under that 10% has adopted AI as such. So this is industry 4.0. That's the background of what we mean by industry 4.0. Coming on to where you are as an organization, to your question, that can we look at predicting the skills 3 years, 5 years down the line? Yes and no. Why? Because it depends upon the stage at which your organization is. Is your organization, and what's the objective? So are you looking at operational excellence right now? So that means as a recruiter, am I moving on to an AI-based recruiting system? So I'm adopting that technology. I am trying to wean out some of the mundane tasks, and I'm looking at replacing it with technology. So what I'm striving in that case is I'm looking at operational excellence. There are organizations which I personally believe most of us are at that stage of evolution. The other is when you are pursuing maybe organizational growth, where your entire upstream and downstream ecosystems are around technology, and you are, shelling out product designs, supply chains, to basically digitize or have digital engineering as a part of all your processes. And the next part of it could be differentiation, which is digital differentiation. Am I using the digital experience, the technology, to develop new models of working, to develop new channels, to develop, a different model, business model altogether, and thus making myself as a differentiated organization. So depending upon which level you are, you would look at choosing, where the skill gap is and how much you need to do to look at bridging that skill gap. So coming to the actual skill gap now, how do you look at managing that? Now, numerous things which you can do in the short run, which we say 3 to 5 years, to look at, bridging that. One of the things which Ankita mentioned, train, retrain, upskill, reskill, but with the keyword of customization. You need to be very, very specific and unique in what you need to do for a particular employee and what is the skill that you need in your organization, and you look at building that journey or building that learning path for the employee. So that's one. The other is what Daniel spoke about, remote working. So I don't know if people have still not realized, but I personally believe that that's here to stay. You like it or not? It was the pandemic which forced remote working on a country like India, where we have heard that culturally Indians per se, and I'm using that not as a racist statement, but I was told that culturally Indians can't work from home. I think post pandemic we have realized that that is a reality that is here to stay, because that not only gives employees flexibility, it also gives organizations the ability to have a global workforce, because you are location agnostic now. So because we've experienced it by, I would say, default and not by design, that's definitely here to stay. So as long as organizations adopt that, their skill gap issues can probably be addressed better, because they get more diversity in terms of global workforce being available to them. The other concepts of gig economy, moonlighting, we've had certain industries adopt and take, kind of adapt them in their organizations. But again, do we have laws? Do we have, the framework for a gig? Our courts are talking about gig economy right now. So I think that's a big change, because that will be the way how future skills will be addressed. Similarly, moonlighting, maybe the laws are not conducive for an employee to pick up a part-time assignment. So that is something which is not available right now. However, 3 to 5 years, I do see that probably these concepts, skill-based contracts and not regular employment, these could be some of the changes which will come. Last piece, just to kind of sum it up, the skill gap problem will, I would say, not be addressed unless we have industry 4.0 accompanied with education 4.0. Our education system has to look at developing the talent which is going to be industry ready, because industry can only address the population that is working currently for the next 10 to 15 years and train them. But the supply of new generation of workers need to come adaptive to that technology to be able to work better. So,
Thanks, Ankita.
Sorry for the long answer.
No. I think it covers the entire aspect. I was also thinking that possibly this Industry 4.0 core areas are more like horizontals. They themselves are not job roles, but they form part of a job role more from a competency perspective. And that's why maybe, as you correctly mentioned, in future trainings and other things, an element of that maybe need to be added from that perspective. Thank you. So coming back to Ankita, I know Aarti has touched upon this moonlighting topic, but I would like to get into a little deeper of it, more from a. Do you think for a country like India, where we have much lesser, I would say, regulatory support from this perspective, and there are ethical questions regarding that? Because these concepts are a little different. Gig economy, they themselves are kind of freelancer. But in case here in moonlighting, what we're trying to propose is you allow your existing employees to do other work as well. So, any thoughts on that, or from a HR perspective?
I think moonlighting existed in some or the other way always. I don't think human race would ever belong to a category where you are happy with whatever you're doing, just that piece. We always feel that we can do a little more. Why can't we explore? And that's how a lot of people, initially also, all these big businesses today, I'm sure they started with something and they kept it as a fixed income and they started exploring something else. Now, the problem here is probably they were on their own. Moonlighting is creating problem in today's time because it's unannounced. And mostly when your people are working with a firm where you're supposed to sit and deliver, say you're doing a coding, and which would require 8 to 9 hours as per the project requirement. And you are probably working for 4 hours and remaining 5 hours, you're investing somewhere else. Question is, will we be able to stop it? Now, with all our pointers that we've been discussing, be it work from home or be it boundaryless organizations or hiring people from anywhere and everywhere, when people are sitting at home, how do you control? So, as an HR person, it's really important, or as an organization, it becomes really important to identify what is within our control. And if at all we know it very clearly that we would not be able to control it and still we are running after it, probably there would be no end. So recently, we were conducting an interview, and I'm sure a lot of the organization, when we were working from home, we were doing virtual interviews. Now, HR would take screenshots, we would make videos, so that the same person has appeared in all the rounds. Now, imagine one of our project manager questioned that entire process is right, but what if after hiring happens, I cannot put that person every day for 8 hours on video call and make him work. If somebody else is sitting at his place and is working on his behalf and he is working somewhere else, how would I know? The answer was maybe some magic. Otherwise, there's no possible way. So, can we really stop it? No. Is it illegal, as Aarti just mentioned? No. Laws are directly not talking about it, and for IT sector, definitely no. There are Factory Act, obviously, it would state, but not for IT sector. So we are not saying. Is it ethical? I would say anything which is unannounced, anything, a simple logic is, if at all you are not able to do it openly, if you are not able to share it with your team and with your organization, it cannot be ethical. We are hiding something, that means we are doing something wrong. But when we take a step back and we think of us as HR people or an organization, if you talk about Swiggy has announced this policy where they say that you can do, this is your working hours, after that you can do work in other organizations as well. Similarly, a lot of Bangalore companies, I'm sure you would have come across those cases where one individual with multiple PF accounts, that's how they got to know that somebody is moonlighting. There was another case where somebody was working with another company and that individual was supposed to send huge files, so he was using his current organization mail ID. So these were the indications where we got to know because it came in front of us through some sources. Otherwise, there are a lot of people who are trying something extra who would continue to do that. The percentage in future would increase. The claim, the research, the survey says that 80% are thinking of doing dual jobs. Imagine if the number is as high as 80, what would be the current status? I'm sure 40. If you ask me, am I investing somewhere else? Yes, I am. Have I announced? Yes, I have. My team members, I know a lot of people are doing. I'm sure everybody sitting here, 50% of us would be thinking, when can I invest? Because the thing is, earlier when we used to be in office, we had limited time and we had restrictions. When you sit at home and somebody would say, do you want to try this? And if you have enough time, your answer would be yes, because that's not unethical. So that's my take on this. The solution, the last part, which I would say is, we have included this in our policy. We have an agreement signed and we keep sending a reminder or a mail on quarterly basis to all our employees that if you think you are not fully utilized, if you think that we are lagging somewhere in upskilling or defining your career growth, or if you think that you have little more time and you would want to explore little more in some other project, please indicate. And if you feel that we are not able to do any of those things, probably 2 hours of investing somewhere else would help your career. We are there to support, but announce. We would want to know. And this is actually help, and that's, as of now, that's the only solution. It has to be an agreement, mutual agreement between the employee and the employer to announce that yes, this is where I stand because this is what I want to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Ankita. I think the policies that you have spoken from your company's perspective, that is definitely progressive in nature. Just a lighter note, I think if people are not videos, it's because we don't know what they're doing. So I'll move to the last question. Daniel. We all now discussed about various aspects of training, analysis, but I think organizational culture plays a very big role in terms of how the employees will behave. It's kind of great picture, and given the millennials and other different types of new people that we have, how do you think that role evolving, how it will
What has majorly changed, or in the experience that I've been part of firms, was the vision and mission used to be a three years sort of thing. I think so that time span, not think so, but the time span has reduced around it. We have moved to 1 year visions to 3 months projects that basically speaks on sub module visions to achieve the larger goal. That's how we have done it, and I think so it's closely related to the fact that culturally the whole remote working piece has actually changed a lot of firms culturally how they're actually attracting talent. And I think so organizational objectives are more reflective right now, more than it was this is what we want to achieve as a firm to this is what we are going to achieve as a firm along with us. That along with us has come out more proactively. I think so it's also because I think so it's about the evolved generation that is coming out every workforce. If you say like in the next 5 years, if you say like when you do a planning, we can do our planning max to max on the Excel sheets. The factors are not aligned on it, and I say factors, the most important is the human capital, which at one point was somewhere we believed or we said that a person who's been in the scheme of work for 6 years will complete the 4 years more as a 10-year loyalist, but I don't think so right now. So I think so when you see that culturally also as a firm, what has happened is a 6 year or a person who's completed 6 years or 7 years in the set of industry that I work in go through a lot of upskilling. It is only because culturally the ones that are actually getting attracted right now do have the capabilities what a senior manager has. They might be they're more nimble on their feet. They're more faster on their approaches. But does that mean that the previous set of managers that I have are incapable? No. It is just that as a firm we have not taken that stance of upgrading them. So even when you look at it culturally from an organizational objective, I think so our objectives need to change every 6 months. That's the thing. And when I was going back, the past 2.5 years, the biggest journey we had as a firm or we as HR was the whole thing of propelling our leaders to think as HR. That you see, like again, I'm going back to that same concept. Like we touched about a lot of topics, but if you see our dads or the families, they actually had 4 jobs at one time. The dad was actually on the farm or coming back basically to having a own hotel of their place, or basically being a traveler, being a transport guy. It's the similar concept. Like the traits as a human is still persistent there, but I think so it's because of the rules and regulations that's happened. In culturally outside the country, moonlighting is a big thing. I'm just giving you a scenario. But in India, because of the how do I say that, the increase of lifestyle dynamics and the need for how the country's also GDP is working around it. I think so 2 jobs is also required to actually sustain a particular lifestyle. In that sort of you see the education part of it. You see the schools are actually charging today. Everything, all of that piece of it. And I think so if you see that is what is actually these are the external factors that are actually playing the values into the organization's objective. And I think so I would say 6 months is something that would help in the cultural change every time, because you're attracting workforce that are coming new with new concepts and ideas.
Thanks, Daniel. I think that gives a perspective that from an organization culture perspective, why it is important to kind of make it integrate so that the employee can perform better. I think we had a very interesting session where Aarti spoke about what are the expectations from future leaders and how the industry 4.0 is going to affect our skill requirement and how we should be prepared from it. Ankita spoke on 2 very important aspects, that how customized training can help employees keep them motivated and incentivized. and how progressive outlook and policies by a company can help. And from Daniel, what we heard is how the onboarding experience, interviewing experience, and a simple culture that follows by the organization can make people happy. So we will stop here. Thanks to all three of you.